Hi, everybody. This is Jennifer with MemberSplash, and want to welcome you to the Wednesday night webinar. Just to let you guys know, it is July the 13th, and this will be our last live recorded webinar for the season. We'll be doing recorded items throughout the week and just posting them. We'll start our live webinars again up at the end of the year when you all are getting ready for the 2023 season, which we will be right here ready to help you when that starts. So, but tonight we are actually going to do a rather complicated, well, not so much complicated, but a very critical thing with Gravity Forms. As most of you know, Gravity Forms is our interface for billing products, billing oddball items that are non-standard for a membership platform system. For example, tonight what we're going to do with a Gravity Form is we are going to set up a form that will allow your members to buy club merchandise. I think we're going to do like a water bottle and a keychain, something very simple. Um, but one of the key things to doing those types of transactions and collecting those types of monies is to make sure that not only do you get the inventory that you need to purchase, like how many water bottles and how many keychains, but also getting the payments into authorize.net and then finally to your bank account. So we're going to go over quite a number of nitty gritty items here tonight. I'm going to show you the quickest way to do some of this stuff. And I fully encourage you to stop me as we go and say, I don't understand that, or what if I want to do this? Little things that will kind of expand this video to be an all-inclusive video regarding Gravity Forms. So why don't we, are there any questions regarding what we're going to do tonight and how I really do want to encourage you to ask as many questions as possible?
No.
All right, great. All right, let's get started. As always, we start here right at the dashboard, and the place Gravity Forms is over on the WordPress menu, and we're going to go into Forms. Now, as many of you know, Gravity Forms, two things, as we say with Gravity Forms, very flexible, very powerful, but also can be very complicated. And so um, with that said, we're going to try to make things a little easier on you. And the way you make things easier on yourself with Gravity Forms is to copy what you know and use it again. And that's one of the things that we are going to do here as part of this video. We are actually going to take a known form that we have called the Polar Bear Plunge form, and we are going to use that to basically to create a new form. And the way you do that is you find a form that works in a way that you're comfortable with, has some of the information you want. And what you do is you simply duplicate this particular form and you modify it for the information you want. This way, you're not completely starting from scratch. You're not starting off with actually building the exact product or and that type of thing. So when you do that, as you can see, the system automatically labels it with a new number for the form, and it basically just puts a 1 at the end of the name. And so once that's done, all you need to do is click in and start editing and modifying. So any questions on that duplication process and how to find the form that you've duplicated?
No, that looks pretty easy.
All right, good. Okie dokie. So um, we're going to do the very first thing. The very first thing that we are going to do is to modify a couple of simple things, and that is going to be the form's title, because this isn't a polar bear plunge. Um, this is a purchasing. This is a purchase form, and it's for club merchandise. And that's really all you need to do to separate these things out. The top bar over here gives you an edit to edit the form. This is the settings of the form. Entries and view we'll save for a little later tonight. So once you've modified the form, you can certainly give it a description, but you want to just slide on down and save the settings so that you're starting with something clean and you know the name of it. Now, the real work begins here under the Edit tab for your form. Your form will always be up here to the left. And like I said, the real crux of what we need to deal with is right here. When you take a look at a form, one of the things that you want to do is take a look what you can keep, and what you have to add and what you can throw away. Clearly, on any form where you're collecting merchandise or you're allowing the member to buy something, you certainly want to keep their name. So this field we can easily keep, and of course, an email address is also it's a pretty smart thing to have in order to get in touch with them. The other thing that you can also do with this form is to include a couple of member splash fields. For example, the account number. This is a hidden field, but it does help you as the pool admin collect a little more information on who's placing the orders. And it could be that you divvy you simply put accounts, all the merchandise for accounts 1 through 50 on the south side of the pool and 50 through 100 on the north side. So you can easily divvy things up, depending on your distribution and what you need to do it. But the member splash account number is always there for you to simply drop in.
And
And always,
Jen,
yes,
does that imply that they would be logged in when they complete this form?
it does imply that. And if you allow the form to be filled out by anybody, the account number will come back blank. Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So the next item, if you take a look at this, remember this was called a polar bear plunge. And so it asks a very simple question, the total number of members attending. We don't need that anymore. So we're just going to hit this little delete button. Quick overview of the new forms. This is a field. That is selected from over here. And when you highlight that field, it gives you all the details of what this field can do for you. And we're going to highlight that when I add a couple of new fields in. But in this case, we don't need this particular field at all, and therefore you can just hit the delete button and it magically goes away. Be careful about deleting things. If you do, it's always on the form. Since you've duplicated, it's always on the other form, so you can go back and look at the setup. And in this particular case, we have a T-shirt. We're not selling T-shirts this time, so we're just going to delete that too. All right. So what we are interested in putting out there is a couple of simple products, and we're going to use the product fields over here. The fields that you can drop on your form are, of course, over here to the right. They're the member splash fields. Then there are some standard fields. These are fields that you would use just for sending out directions, for putting radio buttons in. And advanced fields, name, address, this is pre-formatted. These are all pre-formatted fields that you can drop in. The ones that we are most interested in, and the ones that you as a pool admin are probably most interested in, the reason you're doing this is to collect income. And in this particular case, you're buying a product. So one of the things you want to pop in here is this product field. And you can pop it in just about anywhere. Once it comes in, it's going to ask you, this is just a straight raw field. When I highlight it over to the right, this is all of the intricate details regarding this product. So where this name is, we're just going to call this a keychain. Simple, easy. Um, a description. I don't think that we need a description for a keychain, but if you could always fill them in, um, we can always put in something that needs to go in a little later just to remind us, hey, put in a description here. The field type. So this is where you can get very elaborate with products. This is a very simple form. You're simply purchasing a cheat chain and putting in the quantity. So we're going to stick with a very simple way to put in this product. But the products can get very elaborate. You can have drop downs that allow you to pick only one product. Let me give you an example. Good example of that is if you are selecting, let's say that this form was a swim team form and it's for one child and you need to select a level. Well, you're not going to have the option of selecting an advanced and a beginner. You pick one or the other. And so a drop down is good for things like that. Check boxes are good if you are purchasing multiple things. So for example, um, if you want if we decided to combine some of these um, uh, items for sale, and you were only going to get one of them no matter what, you would probably go with a checkbox. This way you can say, yep, I want the keychain and I want the water bottle, but I don't want the visor or the towel. And you only get one, so you can just do check boxes. We are going to go with the standard single product because it gives us a quantity. And so so that's what we're going with today. So over here, you'll notice there's the description. It tells us the type. And then over here in the area that gives you the price, it basically allows you to type in whatever the price is for that. So and then there are other fields that make things required or not a duplicate. Those would be very specific to anything you're going and setting up. So um, I could talk probably for a ridiculous amount of time on just these fields. For example, you've got an appearance. This is the appearance of things, and you can put for example, quickly, you can put the description below the input or above the input. And that changes where certain things are displayed. As you can see here to the left, it put the description right above it. If I were to put it, below, then it would shift it around again. So lots and lots and lots of ways for this form to look and feel um, the way you want it to. But do remember the it's very powerful, but you could spend hours and hours just tweaking the system to do what you want. So um, that's probably enough talking about that. Any questions on some of these things here?
I have one, Jen.
Sure.
Can we add just multiple simple products, individual products, rather than do anything complicated as far as, using check boxes or anything like that?
Do you mean like the one I'm setting up here, which would this setup right here is about as simple as you are going to get in that you put in the number of quantity and it bills you for it. Is there a specific example maybe that you've heard of that you'd like us to try and lay out here for you?
We'll say I also wanted to sell hats. Could I just set up the exact same product and just make it for hats?
Absolutely. And the interesting thing is they have done a very, very nice job actually with the latest version of Gravity Forms. So you've decided, you kind of like the keychain as a name, but you like the description at the top. You like the way this is laid out. You can simply hit the duplicate and it will take what you've done here and literally copy it. So if you've already tweaked all of the appearances the way you want them, you can just duplicate them one after the other. So here you would highlight this one and you would say you would go to the the keychain and you would just modify it to say hats.
Okay.
And then it would say and we just put in need to keep your head dry, right? Because that's basically what a hat is for. So and we certainly, and then all you do is modify the price to whatever it needs to be. So yes, you can duplicate these. You can use the same product field multiple times, and then you can just go back and pop in another one. It doesn't save all of that nice formatting that you yourself have decided. We're going to have this description at the top. We're going to have the price at the bottom. But you can put as many of these products on as you like. So I'm actually going to go back and delete this. And if there is, I'm going to do one more. And is there another product that let's go with just a simple, let's go with a simple water bottle. How about that? All right. And that we'll crank that price down to something a little bit more reasonable. Once you've got things worked the way you like them, one of the things that you'll want to do is to put in your totals. And the totals, this would be a slight modification to what you're selling here. This is not an attendance form anymore. So you would just say total cost.
Jen, where did you find the total field?
Oh, good question. Okay, so
I know it was on the form, but
it
just
was on. You're right. It was on the form. So let's just get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. And one of the things you would want to do is you would put in. Hold on. In this case, I'm going to put in the total is here. We're just going to drop this in. Notice there's something called a subtotal.
hmm
And we can make, like I said, one of the things we can do is we can make this form as complicated as we want. You can actually put in a subtotal and then of course put in tax, and then your total will roll all that up. So that depends on what you're selling and what you need to report and how elaborate your treasurer and your pool admin can make the form. So the total will roll up the items here. And we can play with that, but we can play with that as we go. You will notice here that this old form has an option to write a check or to pay by credit card, and that is really an advanced feature. That we may have to break off and do that separately because there's actually a lot going on here. But we'll leave this in here for now, just to let you know you can give the members the option to pay by check or by credit card. And for some pools, they love that option. They don't mind getting a check. They don't mind having it mailed in, and it saves and it can save you on your costs, your fees to authorize.net. In general, we don't recommend it because there's no way systematically to, unlike our regular system, there's no way to systematically say, okay, I did get the check and I can go in here and record that this one person got received the check. And so it becomes a bit of a manual process for the pool admins to keep track of those checks. Other than anyway, it's a manual process, and we don't want to make our pool admins do any more work than they absolutely have to.
And they already hate checks.
And a lot of them really don't want checks. They really don't want checks. And so, like I said, it can do it. It requires some conditional logic that has to go into the form. Like I said, it's very powerful, but it can get really complicated really fast. So I'm going to leave this. I'm going to leave this as it is. Are there any questions on this? This is a very, very basic setup that you've got going on here. And I would, under any other circumstance, I would be deleting out the check option here. But maybe we'll go ahead and leave it for a second in case anyone has questions on it.
I have a
Anything?
question.
Sure.
What are required fields? Like the little red dot, I'm assuming that's required. What would you recommend on just a basic product? What do they have to fill out, and what does it mean?
So I would recommend that if one of the things I would certainly recommend is under general, certainly the name should be required, to be honest with you. And I would also recommend the email. None of the rest of these are required to be filled out. The other thing that you would want required is the credit card. Well, in this particular case, let's back up because you've asked a great question. Because you get the choice in this between a check and a credit card, you really can't make the credit card field mandatory. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to make the call as good pool admins that our lives are really too busy to sit here and delineate between a check and between a credit card. And we do have those instructions in the solutions pages. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of that. We're going to get rid of the check and the mail to, where to mail the check to. And back to your question of what should be required, the credit card information really does need to be required. Now, that said, one of the things that we tell you guys to do is to always test your forms. And the more fields that you require, the more you have to fill out in order to test the form. So one of the tricks of this is to try to make as few fields required during the testing phase of your form. For example, you don't want to have to put a credit card in order to just test your form, just to make sure it appears the way you want it to. So while the name and the email should be required, as well as the credit card information. That's probably the thing you would want to do at the very end after you've tested it. Does that make sense?
It
Yes.
sure does. I
It-
tested a form or two and I was unhappy with myself, Jen.
one other little trick, and it won't apply here. But if you happen to say, okay, you know what? Keychains, I know that we're not gonna. I know we're not gonna order more than 400 of them. I'm just not going to accept 2 boxes. We're only going to order 400 of them. You can put a limit on this that says, sorry, once there 400, they're done and they're over. And so where that really comes into play is, for example, lessons where you limit it at 6. But for testing purposes, when you decide you want to limit on something, you want to test those limits. So you never set the limit as high as it is in real life. You generally want to set your limit at about 2. This way you only have to add 2 test entries in order to make sure that the limit's working the way you want. So that's
Right.
another. Does everybody understand that
Yeah,
concept? If
you have to
don't,
make
Yeah.
make sure you change it when you're done. Yeah.
Precisely. And that's
Yep.
another thing, that's another piece of this process of these forms. They are incredibly powerful, but you're going to get a mental workout. You're going to get a mental workout in doing these forms. So sorry about that little side note. So yes, the credit card information absolutely has to be required. Otherwise, what will happen is your members will just fill out the form and not put in the credit card information and keep on rolling right along. So that's the other required piece. So there's another couple of required pieces, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. So we are going to just take a look at this form, and I want to make sure that you guys can see the form in its preview setting. If you notice, I went ahead and clicked preview. And as you can see, this is a pretty darn simple form. Except I forgot to I forgot to hit the save button. So that's probably one of the things you want to do very regularly when loading up your form. So we do a save, and then after you've done the save and it does save it, then you would hit your live preview, and then you can see exactly what your members will see when they go out to the form. So you've got a name, you've got a hidden account number here. You would put in a name, the quantity. And as you know, see, if you'll take a look at this, as you type in the quantity of the items you want, the total updates automatically for you. That total field will loop in all of those items. And it will change as you change the quantities. So at this point, we're just going to go with something a little bit more realistic here. So about one of each is probably the most realistic thing that you could have going on here. So once this is done, and in this particular case, we've made this, we're just testing this and we're making the credit card not required. You would hit the submit button. What this does is it tests the form as it presents to your people. And you'll notice that something comes up here. If you guys have any knowledge of forms, you will be aware that this is what we would call a confirmation. And as you notice, it's pulling in, it very clearly is pulling in the old saved information when this was a polar bear plunge. So that's one of the things that you'll have to update is confirmations notifications. And we'll get to that in just a moment. So we want to keep working on this form. The form itself is functioning the way we want. And if we look at the entries quickly over here to the top, what you will see should be one entry for Ada. For at least in this case, it's a keychain. That's all that's displaying. And notice there isn't an account number because I wasn't logged in as any of the account members at the club. So are there any questions about how to do the basic setup? And then we're going to get into some of the advanced pieces, and the most important is your authorized.net feed. Any questions about the basic setup and testing it?
No.
Okay.
This
All right.
This did not process, correct? Because we
This
didn't.
did not process because your authorized.net feed is not in place, and nor is the credit card yet a required field. I skipped right past it, just the way your members would if you did not set up the feed or put in the required information for the credit card. And that's key to this. And that's really what this, believe it or not, that's what this whole video is about, is getting to that authorized.net information. So in order for you to actually get paid for this merchandise, we have to do two things. And the first thing is to make the credit card information required. And to do that, of course, you would go to the settings, you'd scroll down to the required field, and you'd update your form. The second thing that you're going to have to do is you are going to have to set up a connection between your form and your authorized.net account. And that is actually a little easier than you may think. We call it setting up the authorized.net feed. Sometimes we've called it the authorized.net integration. But in general, this is connecting the form to your authorized.net account so you can actually be paid. And the place you do that is under settings. The settings tab on the main form has a number of different items. It has something called form settings. We'll get into that in a moment. Your confirmation is the simple 1 or 2 line sentence that says, congratulations, you filled out the form. We look forward to dropping off your merchandise. And on down the line. So there are a number of different things that you can do under settings, but the most important one for this particular video is your authorized.net feed. Each form will have these settings, and in order to attach this form to your authorized.net account, you would go into your authorized.net feed. The Gravity Forms puts the options over here on the left-hand side, and it'll clearly tell you if you have a feed configured or not. And the way you would configure your feed is to come in here and just click. You can hit Add New or Create One. It does the same thing. Any questions on this so far?
Not yet.
Okay.
I have one, Jen.
Sure.
So if I'm duplicating a form, like in this case,
Yes.
in my old form has the authorized.net feed built in, will it not come over to the new form?
You are absolutely correct, and that's a key thing to. It's a key thing that we need to make sure everyone understands. With every form, whether it is duplicated or downloaded, you have to set up a new authorized.net feed for every form in your system.
Good to know.
And it's fairly critical in that if you forget to set up that feed for some reason, or you forget to make that credit card information required, there isn't a way for the form to just rebill the members who have paid for something automatically. The form doesn't hold the credit card information for security reasons. So if the feed doesn't get set up or the credit card isn't made required, your members will have to refill out the form in order to make payment. Now for merchandise, it's not that big of a deal. You can just simply ask them, hey, go ahead and refill out the form. However, for other forms that are very important, for example, if you have a form that you've set up to do swimming lessons, and it's swimming lessons for the whole week at 10 a.m. in the morning, and you have a limit of 5 kids on that, you take the chance on you can't have the member refill out the form, because if you clear the form, that one person that was counting on the 10 o'clock class for their child, you can't guarantee they'll get back in it. So for any form, it's critical to get that feed in. Maybe it even should be the first thing that you do. But for forms where you have limits, it's a situation where you are structuring like a family's vacation, the week or the time or something like that. It's really critical that you get that information in there, because if it doesn't get in there, the only thing that you're left to do is to accept a check for them or have them come to you and pay cash. There's no way to redo the limit. There's no way to just take the information that's there and resend it. Okay.
Mm.
And I didn't mean to harp on that, but it's we've had a couple of pool admins who've missed that setup, and it's been tough for them to overcome it as the season goes on. So, are there any questions on that?
Jen, after you set up the feed, I'm assuming you're going to show us how to make sure it works, like based on what you just said. You'll explain that.
Yeah, I basically, well, actually what I always do is I tell them to set up the feed and then to actually go and get to grab the club's credit card and actually process a charge, physically process the charge all the way through. You can you can switch the system to test mode. And you can do that. I'm going to see, are there any other options out there for testing? You can switch things to test mode, but then you risk the chance of not turning it back on. My recommendation is always once you've set up the form and you got the feed in place, you should grab the credit card for the club or take a trusted board member that you know is going to purchase the merchandise, have them fill out the form, look at the feed as it comes, look at the charges as they came through, and then actually go to your authorized.net account and look at the charge as it comes through your authorized.net account. So
Okay.
One other thing. So with regard to this name here, I'm just calling it new merch for right now, and it's a product and service. So that basically, this is a product, so it's a product and service. The feed name is actually very useful because this feed name that you're seeing right here, where it says new merch, new merchandise, it actually does appear on the transaction within authorized.net.
That's good to know.
So you can look at these transactions and see where they're coming from or where they originated within the member splash system. So the feed name is new merchandise. It's a product and service. You're passing on the form total, and everything else can be left blank as long as you are just processing a single credit card. All the rest of that can be left blank. So once this loads, now I think I interrupted somebody. Was there another question about the monies or how the process works for the feed?
Well, I would report that Katie stole my question, but other than that, no further comment. I thought that was really important, actually, because I was under the impression that if I duplicated a form and it already had the feed set up, I was in good shape. But boy, I could have had some real problems.
Yeah. So yeah, we don't want that to happen to you. Couple of other things the forms will do. Well, first of all, let's focus on the monies, because that's fairly important to most of the people that set up a form. They're collecting some kind of money, and so let's make a couple of other things. The form, you've now made sure that the feed is there, and you hopefully have processed the transaction through the system, and your treasurer's looked at it in authorized.net, and you can see that it's coming from the feed called new merchandise. A couple of other things you want to look at from the perspective of money is the entries. The entries actually are in the second tab over here in the lineup, and the entries just show you exactly that in a column top to bottom. If we had 3 here, you get to see all of the information that you've collected, and it is really good as a pool admin to take a look at this information. You really do want your entries to collect all the data that you need in order to either audit or present to your accountant or do inventory. For example, the hats, maybe you need to actually just look for the number of, maybe you need those quantities. Maybe it could be anything, but the best thing to do is to take a look at this form and look at the entries and what's available to you so that you can see it, and make sure it has absolutely everything you need to do what you need to do as a pool admin. One of them is always, of course, to take a look at the money. And to get more information on the entries, you would click this little gear here, and the system will pull up all of the details that were included in that form. So the keychain, the price, the quantity, the water bottle, the hat. You can also see as you scroll down here, it's going to contain a few things like the card number. The card number is going to have just the last 4 digits. It's not saved. The entry date. It records an entry date. It records the user's IP address, things of that nature. And as you scroll through these items, you can decide what you need, what you don't need to be included. And for the most part, for the most part, the only thing you're really interested in is generally a count on the merchandise that you've got and the total money collected, if that makes sense. So we are just gonna go ahead and add that, and it'll take a second to come up. Are there any questions about the entries here?
I have a question. If I, let's say this Ada person wanted a refund, can I just delete this right from the entry? And is that all I have to do?
Oh, so you can't just delete it from the entry here. What you would want to do is you would want to log into authorize.net and issue the credit from authorize.net. If you go into authorize.net, you'll be able to look up the transaction for by the last name. So Ada, and then or Lovelace, and then when you go into that system, the system actually lets you click a button that says refund the transaction. And then what you probably will want to do is to come back here and go ahead and remove the line item, so that if you are collecting totals, those will balance out for you. You don't want to include another $27.50 when in reality you've already credited it back. So
Okay.
there is one other thing that I can show you in order to make your life a little bit easier. When you have 60 of these line entries, looking down and just doing a quick visual calculation doesn't do you much good. You can also download these entries. And the place that you download them is here under the, you go back to your WordPress menu under Forms and you go to Import, Export. And from here, you get a list of all of your forms, and you can select the entries to export the entries. So what you would end up doing in this case, and now I can't even remember what I called our form here. I believe I called it Club Merchandise, but I could be wrong. Well, that's
Maybe
a bit of,
I think you're right. Club
Purchase.
Purchase club merch, maybe.
maybe it was Purchase Club Merchandise. It's another thing. You've got to clean up. Here we go. Thank you very much. Probably should clean up your forms, Jennifer, and stop causing. There it is. Club Merch. So what the system does is it loads up all the fields from the form and it asks you which ones you want to download. You can select them all, or you can just choose, you can just choose the ones you need. A lot of times people don't care about the URL or the IP address. They don't care about the entry date. They just need how many hats, how much money, and let's go. So with that said, you can download them. You can even put in a date range. There's a little bit of conditional logic. I don't use it. I just put it in an Excel spreadsheet, delete what I don't need when it's in the Excel spreadsheet and go from there. So you just click the ones you need and you hit the export button. Are there any questions? I know that I've gone on for way too long, but I do think that this is, like I said, it's really useful, especially when you want to collect information from your members, and it can be a bit complicated. So are there any other questions about the form or the feed or the collecting of money in this particular case?
No, I think I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good too. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, that's money. Next time we'll go over something like confirmations, notifications, sending email to the members so that they get perhaps maybe even an email with which merchandise they purchased, because you can actually do that with Gravity Forms. Gravity Forms has a ton of features and functions, and hopefully we'll be looking forward to getting some of the really detailed conditional logic, some of the things for the more advanced user in the September timeframe. We'll be getting some of those videos out to you then. So, all right. Well, thank you so much. Have a great
Great.
night.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.